Hey, in case the president has not already told you this a dozen times this month, did you know that Donald Trump used to run a massive business enterprise? And although those ventures are on pause, kind of, while he completes his second term in office, one wonders what effect that prior experience has on world leaders. So prepare to succeed in learning without really trying on today's edition of the Geopolitics Helpline. Does a leader having business experience make them more prone to making bad crisis bargaining decisions? For example, if a leader is also a business tycoon, they could think that their experience makes them a better negotiator on the world stage, when in reality, they could just be incredibly out of touch with how countries work. Obviously, this question is really asking about Donald Trump, or asking whether what we observe about Trump is unique to him, or is a general feature of leaders with his background. Fortunately, we have some data on this subject. It turns out that Trump is abnormal in the way that most viewers probably think of him, but there is at least one interesting relationship between business experience and international conflict, which coincidentally comes as NATO leaders meet for their annual summit, and is ironically the thing that perhaps Trump hates the most. But let me back up a moment and offer some anecdotal thoughts that the data cannot really speak to. I have mentioned before that people like Steve Witkoff are not uncommon. They have successful business careers, and then they want to come over to public service to help give back. Now, I have had a successful career. Technically, I am a doctor in the original meaning of the word. But you do not see me wanting to help give back to the medical community by working in a hospital. I mean, sure, I guess some of my skills are transferable. I can usually read through medical journals and understand the research designs and statistical models being used. But I know my limits. The problem is that there is just such a large experience asymmetry that no amount of latent ability can overcome it. For example, I may very well think that I am more intelligent than the police officer sitting across from me in an interrogation chamber. But he has spent tens of thousands of hours doing this before. And sure, I have plenty of experience thinking about coercive bargaining, but it is not quite the same thing. I know enough to know to get a lawyer who can resolve the experience asymmetry. Well, it is a similar story with these international negotiators, ranging from the little things like not understanding that you need to bring your own interpreter, to bigger things like lacking experience in a world of unenforceable contracts. What makes the situation notably worse for the Trump administration is that they had just spent a year gutting the bureaucracy, believing that the now unemployed group could not be trusted to implement the policies that the president wanted. Well, sure, there are benefits on the zero-sum dimension if you do that, but there is also a common values dimension that you now lose out on. And now we are losing out on those common values. It turns out that I disagree with an implication of the original question. I think that business experience actually does make those individuals better negotiators on the world stage than a random alternative background. They just need to be humble enough to understand that they need support from bureaucrats with more experience in these particular applications. And if you will permit me to again nest a geopolitics helpline within a geopolitics helpline, a second viewer writes, Jared Kushner once spoke at my school, and he gave us a long discussion about what it was like negotiating the Gaza deal, negotiating with Iran, and all kinds of stuff. One thing he said was that, a lot of times in politics and negotiations, the people he was dealing with were just not smart, either unreasonable hawks or simply dull and unimaginative. How accurate do you think this is, as someone who spent some time in that political ecosystem? Now, I cannot verify any of the premises of that question, but I will say that this seems par for the course for someone coming from business to politics. They spend their entire lives working to accumulate wealth, and then they are suddenly befuddled when someone wants to do something other than accumulate wealth. Cue the irony that the opposition is the unimaginative one. To be clear, I do not doubt that Kushner understands that Iranians, and whoever else, have these preferences. This is not a matter of strategic or political obliviousness. He just does not understand on a psychological level why someone would have a world outlook different than his. I am sure that many of us would agree that promoting worldwide economic growth would be a better world outlook. Nothing has done more to increase both lifespans and the quality of life than raising a large chunk of the third world out of poverty. But that is just not how some people operate. Anyway, I said at the top that Trump is not representative of the broader class of individuals who transition from the business world to world politics. Let me give you a quick counterexample before moving to the data. Jimmy Carter is often the butt of jokes as having been but a modest peanut farmer before getting into politics. But actually, he turned a struggling family business into a successful enterprise. And he was a millionaire in today's dollars by the time that he started running for office. That is not on the same level of wealth as Trump, of course, but it is still a business background. And Carter fundamentally got it. He was the primary mediator of the Camp David Accords, resolving a hardened conflict between two longtime enemies who were primarily motivated by ideology. As we turn to the data, let me first note that it is difficult to have a metric that tells us whether someone has done a good job that we could apply across cases. In the absence of something better, let's just look at whether leaders from business backgrounds get involved in more conflicts. This is at least a good first pass at the question, because the default good outcome in crisis bargaining is for the states to strike a peaceful settlement within the bargaining range. Fortunately, the data to answer this question already exist. All I had to do was go down to the library and pull out the correct book. Why Leaders Fight is not a study specifically about business leaders and conflict. Instead, it is a broad overview of leader backgrounds and individual incentives in international relations. For example, one thing that I did not know before opening up the book is that the median leader age has not changed much since World War II ended, even though lifespans have significantly increased over that time. Compare that to our recent discussion of the geriatric world peace. In any case, here is the key graph that estimates the likelihood of a leader being involved in a militarized interstate dispute as a function of that leader's pre-office professional background, among other things. The horizontal axis is not directly interpretable, other than that you are less likely to fight if you are below 0, and more likely to fight if you are above. As you can see here, leaders with business backgrounds are less likely to fight. This may run contrary to one's expectations if all one was going off of was Trump. However, the relationship is minor, and it is statistically indistinguishable from no relationship. Actually, what is remarkable about the study is how few leader characteristics matter for predicting dispute occurrence. Doctors get involved in fewer military conflicts. Those with military backgrounds get involved in more military conflicts. Also, all hail the peace bearers that we knew all along, the illegitimate children of the world. Somewhere Jon Snow is smiling. I would not describe these results as being the final word on the subject, but it is all that we can go on for that specific question. However, there is an interesting related question that we can be more confident about the answer. Apropos of nothing, did you know that, once upon a time, NATO allies tended to free ride on the United States within the confines of NATO? Well, maybe that is no longer the case. We will see. But to be more precise, some leaders with some types of backgrounds are more inclined to free ride. Here is an article from a friend of the channel, Matt Furman, who you may recall previously was on for an interview about the potential for development of nuclear weapons in Iran and Ukraine. A quick and dirty first pass at the data shows that the annual increase in military spending for European NATO countries is 0.19% among leaders with executive business backgrounds. For non-business executives, it is 2.36%. In other words, business executives tend to shortchange military spending. Running a full model with controls for other observable factors, the difference remains 1.24 percentage points between the two types of leaders. This is indeed something unique to military spending, as there is no discernible difference between business executives and non-business executives on government spending overall. Moreover, there is no discernible difference in military spending between business executives and non-business executives in similar but non-NATO countries. Thus, it seems that these business executives are more inclined to free ride on the United States, given that the United States is there as a backdrop. The question then becomes whether individuals with these selfish preferences to free ride self-select into business, if they discover free riding incentives while they are there, or if they have some other type of personal evolution as a business executive. To start, it cannot be that regular leaders are oblivious to the free riding incentive, whereas business leaders have learned that over time. This is a fairly basic point, and even if you had a non-business executive come into office, an advisor well established within the geopolitical bureaucracy would raise that point the very first moment that it became relevant. Moreover, we could look toward leaders with economics or finance backgrounds and use them as a placebo test. They are certainly aware of the incentive to free ride, yet the estimated relationship for that group is about half of what it is for business executives, and it is not distinguishable from zero. Now, the ideal way to rule out the self-selection possibility is to randomly assign leaders of countries to sometimes have business backgrounds, and sometimes to not have business backgrounds. I am still sad to report that they continue to prevent me from dictating who becomes world leaders. Until I get to conduct all of the experiments that I want, one thing that we could examine is the subset of leaders who are predisposed to working in business. Upon leaving office, many former leaders choose to go into business afterward. Thus, we have two groups that we could compare: leaders with business backgrounds before entering office, and leaders with business qualifications post-tenure. It is not a true experiment, but it is the closest thing that we are going to get. And sure enough, in a separate paper, we only observe the difference for leaders with business experience beforehand. This appears to indicate that business executives are socialized to take advantage of free riding opportunities, and that persists into those individuals' time in government. Getting back to the original question, I suppose it is up to you to decide whether this qualifies as a good or bad crisis bargaining decision. Sometimes what is good for the individual country is bad for the collective. No doubt that many similar conversations are taking place right now at the NATO summit. Meanwhile, you can take a stroll down memory lane by listening to that full interview with Matt Furman on Iranian and Ukrainian nuclear issues. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.